Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Sidorenko, and it's a great pleasure for me to welcome you all to the fifth annual Risk Awareness Week. Probably the biggest virtual risk management and decision-making conference in the world. As of today, we have just under 3,000 registrations from more than 100 countries, and I'm delighted to welcome you all. So today I wanted to start with some valuable. Hi everyone, and thank you for writing in the comments. There are basically four options on how you may be watching this. You may be watching this on our official Risk Academy YouTube channel, and if you are, I welcome you to sign up for the actual Risk Awareness Week conference on the website 2023.riskawarenessweek.com. This is just the beginning, and I'll only be broadcasting to social media very few of the workshops. More than 40 workshops will be happening on this website that you're seeing just below. And if you're watching this in replay, don't worry, because all the replays will be available on the website. So you technically you can watch this next week, next month. Enjoy the conference. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, exactly the same message. And if you're watching this on the actual website, please do write in the comments. And thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Hi, Sammy. Hi, Sydney. Nisar, Susan, Latifa, hi everyone. Delighted to see you. And I wanted to start by sharing some of the kind of key takeaways that I think you need to be aware of for your risk management. Hi, Elizabeth. And thank you. I do. Well, I mean, let me explain. Literally on the next slide, I think I'll. No, Imam. Well, I mean, this is live. Iman, this is live, but this will be recorded. So the answer to your question is both yes and no. Let me start with the first message. And I think this will explain why I've added decision making to the conversation, because in my mind, and this is why I think it's so critical. In my mind, risk management is two separate things, and this is very, very important. There is what I call risk management one, and it's very easy to tell if something is risk management one because it talks about enterprise-wide overall, the corporate, and you would be familiar with things like a policy or a framework that overarches the whole organization, or a corporate risk register, a strategic risk register, sometimes it's called, or a risk report that kind of captures the whole essence of the risks. And this is what I call risk management one, because there's usually some sort of expectation, external expectation, asking for that kind of risk analysis to be aggregated. It's usually the reason it needs to be aggregated is usually for an external user, because somebody wants to kind of see a snapshot of what the risks within the organization are. And anything that is kind of this holistic, enterprise-wide, overarching, I call it risk management one for two reasons. One, somebody is kind of asking or expecting to see it. But the second reason, this is much more important, is if you were to attempt to actually do it properly, then you would realize that it's physically impossible to do proper in-depth risk analysis across the whole organization, because it takes so much effort and the complexity of different risks and the interaction between the risks, that you have to sacrifice the quality. Basically, if you want a holistic picture, you have to sacrifice the quality. And this is an interesting empirical test that I've been doing over the last 10 years. Every single time I would have, just like everybody else, I would start with kind of this holistic picture. But then something would come up. For example, an environmental team would come to me and say, oh, we need to deep dive into this specific risk, which is, number 35 on your risk register. And every time I would do that, when we deep dived into the risk, for example, when we started analyzing, what are the underlying risk factors, how do we break it up into a decision tree or an influence diagram or a bow tie diagram, every time we would investigate a specific risk, what I found is that the actual risk is a completely different animal to what we anticipated it to be when we were having this kind of enterprise-wide overall conversations. So the lesson for me personally, and I mean, share your stories in the comments and see if your experience is different, is that when you attempt to capture all of the risks, you end up capturing kind of the simplified version of these risks. And somebody's asking from LinkedIn, dependencies question mark. Yeah, I mean, most risks are interdependent, which means if one happens, the probability of the other one happening is actually increased quite significantly. So in my experience, every time you do kind of this holistic enterprise, you end up sacrificing a lot of quality, because the alternative is to do proper risk model for every single risk and then aggregate it up. But that just takes years, and I'm not exaggerating. It literally takes so long that nobody kind of does that. So everybody kind of top down and goes, trying to kind of start with high-level overview of the risk. So long story short, the reason I call it Risk Management 1 is that I very long ago realized that if you do holistic enterprise, corporate-wide, big, strategic executive for the board, for the audit committee, you end up sacrificing the quality so much that it becomes almost useless for the actual decision making. So my point is that avoid Risk Management 1 if you can, but if you can't, don't kid yourself thinking that you can kill two birds with one stone. You can't satisfy the reporting requirements, the external stakeholders, and have something useful for the actual decision makers within the company to use for either mitigation or investment decisions or budgeting and so on. So these are two different animals. Metin is saying risk management without a proper strategic planning is worthless, in my opinion. I think you got it the other way around. It's strategic planning without risk analysis is worthless. And this is the kind of the point that I'm going to make next, and this is a very important point. So Risk Management 1, and if you can see, I've put a little drapes on the picture, which literally means window dressing. Is you may want to, you may have to have it, but don't kid yourself. That's not real risk management. Risk Management 1 is not real risk management. It's just window dressing to show everybody who's asking that you have some sort of notion of risk management happening in place. Real risk management happens in Risk Management 2, and that's a completely different ball game. And Risk Management 2, and this is, I mean, I've tried to illustrate it as best as I could in the diagram, because see what I'm trying to communicate. I'm trying to say that there are actually we actually have multiple different risk managements. For budgeting, you would use one kind of risk management, one methodology. For investment, you would do and I call it, just again, for the illustration purposes, I call it budget at risk, NPV at risk, OPEX at risk, CAPEX at risk, schedule at risk, KPI at risk. That just means that it's a different methodology. it's a different risk-based methodology. So if you wanted to input risk-adjusted information into budgeting, you would use a methodology completely different to what you would have used if you wanted to calculate a schedule delay risk analysis in one of your projects, or if you were to do risk analysis for vendor accreditation or credit risk management or performance risk management, or if you wanted to optimize logistical choices, you would use a completely different methodology. So it's naive to think that you can have a single framework that describes all of these kind of 20 different risk managements. No, instead, you don't have a single framework. In the risk management tool world, you don't have a single framework. You have sections and chapters and paragraphs in the in each of the documents, in the procurement procedure, in the investment policy, in the operational maintenance procedure. You basically risk management 2 is about changing the way organization is doing something, is doing planning, is doing forecasting, is doing decision making. Different decisions require different approaches to risk management. So this is the first point that I wanted to make. And somebody from LinkedIn is asking, what is the time frame for both? There's no right answer. You can take as long as you want to. You can do it as quickly as you want. Risk management 1 usually takes like, I don't know, 2-3 weeks, maybe a month to get everything done. You basically have this polished policy, corporate risk register, maybe some report, maybe risk appetite statement. Again, I wouldn't have them if I could afford not to have them. And some of the documents, for example, framework, I don't have it because I think it's meaningless in the company where I work right now. But if you, for some reason, if you weren't able to convince the rest of the stakeholders that you don't need risk management 1 and risk management 2 is sufficient to build a business case and communicate to the external world, so you can do it in a couple of weeks. Risk management 2 takes much longer because it's not a single, it's not, you have to understand, I've simplified it for marketing purposes as risk management 2, but it's not a thing. It's not a single item. It's basically this year we're working on integrating risk analysis into procurement, and that's going to take us a few months. And then next year we're going to work on investment projects, and that's going to take us a few months. And it's basically you take one decision at a time, and then you just focus on that. You deep dive really hard. And for example, for capex at risk, on Friday, if I'm not mistaken, on Friday, I will be doing a workshop literally demonstrating in detail how we've done that. Just giving you an example of kind of how I've taken the report that finance has been running, and I've turned it into a Monte Carlo risk analysis report very, very simply. Like it literally took me, I don't know, a couple of hours to do it. So this is the first point that I wanted to make. The second point that I wanted to make is the fact that proper. I mean, I don't really want to use the word proper, but what I'm trying to say is that risk analysis requires somebody in the organization to understand how to take historical loss data and convert it into distributions, how to calibrate experts, how to feed distributions to different loss data, how to find correlations between different variables, how to build risk models and turn them into calculators, how to run simulations, how to calculate expected losses, unexpected losses, the probability of success, and how to store risk data in SIPs, in stochastic information packets that can be transferred from organization to organization or from department to department. Somebody has to know that. That's risk management too. However, and this is a very, very important point, all of us are using electricity, but not many people know how electricity is generated. And yet we have no trouble actually using the electricity. And this is the kind of the analogy that Sam Savage and I have been using in our Chance Talk podcast. We've been talking about generators and users. To do risk management, you don't need to know how to generate electricity, but somebody in the organization has to. And sometimes you can even have an external generator who generates the distributions, the models, and then the people within the company just use them just like they use electricity in the offices. And this is the second very, very important point. You can't do risk analysis without understanding math. Like it's physically impossible. Risk is a distribution. You have to understand what's the difference between expected losses and unexpected losses, and how you can use expected losses in budgeting and unexpected losses in treasury cash flow planning and stress testing. And you need to understand the tail of the distribution so you can actually purchase appropriate insurance, because every time we've recalculated it, we actually found that we were underinsured and we were still overpaying for insurance. So one of the reasons why I was named the best risk manager in Europe in 2021 is we actually ended up saving $13 million by doubling and tripling our coverage and still saving $13 million on insurance premiums, which is crazy in my experience. Aditya is asking, will attendees get certifications for the workshops they attended? Yes, of course, they will, but only the full access users will get CPD certificates. It's kind of one of the benefits of upgrading to a full access to get CPD certificate if this is important to you. Hi everyone from South Africa, thank you. Fraud risk is it specific? So to me, fraud risk is just an example of a specific issue where you would want to deep dive. And the only point I would make is, instead of treating fraud risk as a separate thing, I would instead find decisions where fraud risk is a factor, is a significant factor. For example, payments, vendors, procurement, and probably some and probably investment projects, and just make sure fraud risk is explicitly addressed in these decisions. Hi Penny from Queensland. Hi Action from Ukraine. And by the way, I'm guessing you saw that in every single email that you get from the organizers of this conference. If you have a chance, please do support the victims of the Ukraine war and now the war conflict in Israel. I mean, it's insane the times we're living in, and I mean, it feels a bit weird talking about economic risk management. Okay, I did answer your question. Hi Penelope, thank you for joining your third row this risk awareness week. This is my fifth one. Keep it coming. Hi Nam from Switzerland. Thank you very much for commenting. So let me answer a few more questions, and thank you. Keep them coming. I mean, this is what I love about live sessions. I can quickly respond to you in the moment. So Mohammed is actually asking an amazing question. He's saying, once you do risk management too, you would basically have some sort of input for updating corporate risk register. And that's exactly how it should work. You do your corporate risk register high level, fully appreciating that you compromised on quality and most of your risk assessments are completely wrong. They're just made up. And you can have the workshops, the interviews, they're still going to made up, because once you deep dive into a specific risk, we deep dived into this water pollution risk once, and it turned out to be $1 billion more than all of the experts originally believed in the organization. So don't pretend that your corporate risk register is representative. No, it's just a guesstimate, a very high level guesstimate. However, once you actually do risk management too, you then immediately feed it back, and over time, your corporate risk register will actually start being realistic or closer to reality. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that this will take you years to get all of the risks in the risk register deep dived sufficiently for it to actually be representative of reality. So don't start with this vision of, this is why I'm saying ERM is such a nonsense concept. Don't start with this vision of we have to deep dive every single risk. No, just focus on some decisions, some important decisions first, and then get it done, and fit it. Just don't forget to fit it back into the corporate risk register. Letty is saying building risk management into your planning is a good management. It's just good management. I obviously completely agree. And this is very troublesome that most business practices in corporate finance, in procurement, in accounting, in finance, in treasury, they pretty much ignore risks by taking the averages, average foreign exchange, average interest rate. That's literally the opposite of good risk management. And sometimes they run like a stress test at the end, but that's again that's very, very narrow, very poor risk management. So let me come back to the comment, and do share what your feedback is on the generators versus users. What I'm trying to say is somebody in the organization has to be a generator. It could be an external person, but you as the risk management person need to, basically you need to make a decision. If you're not the generator, then you have to find somebody who is. It could be an external person, could be an internal person. There are plenty of quants in most organizations on the planet, usually sitting within treasury or investment or finance. Somebody who understands statistics will have no trouble fitting distributions, figuring out correlations, and so on. So have a look at the left side of the slide, and all of these things, if these words are meaningless to you, that's just an indication that you are not the generator, and that is absolutely fine. That just means you are the user, and you need to find a generator within your organization. And I've joined, over the last 10 years, I've joined 3 or 4 companies, and I've done in between working as the head of risk and insurance. I've done some consulting, so I've seen dozens and dozens of organizations, and every single one had no problem finding a generator. Generator is basically anybody who understands math well enough to run a Monte Carlo simulation, and that's actually not difficult. And one of the reasons why I created Risk Awareness Week is to share with you case studies from around the world, from some amazing speakers who actually show you how easy it is to generate, and how they explain how there are different mathematical techniques. So catch all the workshops with Sam Savage this week and Doug Hubbard, who's actually going to show you how to do that. So what do the rest of the people have to do? The users, their role then shifts from trying to figure out how to fit the distribution to loss data, and why loss data is insufficient, and you need to look for proxies to find the proper input into your risk models, and how to build the actual risk models and the calculators. Your role should shift from from doing the manual work, or the mathematical work, to finding opportunities where risk calculators can be added to existing decision-making processes, convincing the business, finding the sponsors for risk-based decision-making, improving the risk culture, educating people on risk-based thinking, presenting and sharing, and being out there. Because the real problem with risk management 2 implementation, the real problem with risk management 2 implementation is not the complexity of the models. Most risk models are actually very kindergarten basic. From a mathematical point of view, they are embarrassingly simple. And most of the models that you will see at the Risk Awareness Week are explicitly embarrassingly simple, like way too simple. for the business need, because we're not showing you the kind of the real hard models that we also have in our organizations, because we want to start with something that anybody on the planet can use. But the real problem is not model building. That's not the difficult part. Building calculators, that's not difficult. The real problem is finding the people, encouraging the people, finding the sponsors, finding somebody within the organization willing to switch from the way they made the decisions yesterday to the way they will make decisions tomorrow. That's the real value of risk management department, trying to kind of be there, be out there, constantly encourage the culture of risk-based thinking. Pierre Ponk is asking, in risk management too, how do you know that risk company decides to take is within the risk appetite and tolerance? So this is a good question, because you have to stop thinking about, in risk management too, of kind of risks in the aggregate way like you would in the risk register. In risk management too, you start with a specific decision. You identify what are the assumptions associated with that decision. You identify what are the risks associated with that decision. And instead of having a single decision, you identify options, alternatives, and you calculate the risk profile for each of the alternatives, and then you compare. And so the question of risk appetite and the tolerance doesn't come up in your traditional sense, because it becomes self-evident, because every decision, for example, investment decisions usually have a hurdle rate or internal rate of return. That becomes your risk appetite, because you then calculate, well, what is the probability of exceeding the internal rate of return? And then you present it to the decision makers, and they're saying, yes, we're happy with that. That means that's within their risk appetite. In schedule risk analysis, in risk management too, every single risk analysis is a completely different thing. For example, in vendor accreditation, the initial risk model that the procurement was using was giving a 70% false negative, which means 70% of the contracts that were blacklisted by the system were actually good contractors. And that was clearly, when we presented this, the procurement team, the head of procurement immediately said, that is not the intention. That's way outside of our risk appetite. And as in, like, it's way too much risk avoidance for what we're trying to do. And so we've adjusted the risk model. And so whenever you look at a specific decision, the question of whether this is too much risk or not enough risk, that becomes almost self-evident. Somebody is suggesting that there's a simple formula: lost data times employees divided by 12 months. No, I think that's a pretty good example of law of averages. You wouldn't represent risk ever as a single number. You represent risk as a distribution, and which has expected losses, your averages, unexpected losses, your VAR, and the tail. But more on that in the risk awareness week. This is the whole purpose of risk awareness week. Plenty of workshops to explain to explain all of these kind of fundamental concepts. Now, next point. Let me first illustrate you. I've recorded the video, and see how I'm changing kind of few things here, and it automatically recalculates 10,000 scenarios in almost instantaneous. I mean, this is using kind of the previous version with SIP Math Standard 2 instead of 3, so it takes few seconds. Right now, it would take milliseconds. So what I've just demonstrated to you, this is the future of risk management. I've basically taken the report that finance has been using, and obviously all of the data is dummy data, and I've actually turned it into a construction project. But in reality, it was a completely different construction project for a house. So all of the risks and everything obviously is just made up. But the point I'm trying to illustrate, this is the future of risk management, interactivity, where You take the existing report, and behind the scenes, you add the risk engine that simulates thousands and thousands of scenarios. And then when somebody from the business, the decision maker, changes an assumption, he's saying, I think this should now be 20 weeks. Or I think he's saying, or he could be saying, I'm not very confident about this forecast. I want more uncertainty included in our stress test. He makes the change in normal Excel using his phone if he wants to, or any computer on the planet, doesn't need any special software, doesn't need anything. It's native Excel, anything extra to what he's normally doing, makes the change, and the whole thing is recalculated instantaneously, now giving him a different risk-adjusted result. And this is what I've just demonstrated. This is, the whole session is called Future Risk Management Trends. This is what risk management future looks like. But in order for risk management future to look like this, you have to understand risk management 1, risk management 2, and the difference between them. And you have to clearly delineate this relationship between the generator and the user. You need to, if you are the user, you need to find somebody who will be a generator. By the way, this could be a junior math graduate. This is just how basic, like you don't look for senior executives with math degrees to work to make risk management happen. And even though I've got 2 degrees, 1 degree in risk management, I was the first ever undergraduate in risk management in Australia. I mean, our 30 people, we were the first ever undergraduates in risk management, which was hilarious because they canceled the degree a few years later. So we were the guinea pigs in the failed experiment. But luckily, my second degree is in statistics. So to me, all of this is very simple stuff. And yet, I still use a generator. I have people who are better at math than I am. And I use a generator to help me with risk calculators. Hi, Lina. Thank you so much. Letty is asking, when you have a legal need for compliance risk management, how do you build this into risk management too? Okay, so this is a very, very good question, because most organizations have to have some sort of compliance risk management. And I encourage you to have this conversation with your legal and tax team and your health and safety team and in your environmental team, because what I suspect you will discover that somebody will very quickly explain to you that there's no way you can put actual compliance risks on paper, because this will immediately become a document in the court case and can be used against the organization. And so the reality is you have to have compliance risk management, but there's no way you can do it like proper, in-depth, well-documented, deep dive calculators and everything. And so what this means is that compliance risk management most of the time will stay risk management 1, because you have to compromise on the quality. You'll have to keep the risks high level. You'll have to kind of play pretend compliance risk management, because there's no way you will actually do proper compliance risk management and not expose your organization immediately to additional risks. So I'm interested kind of in your experience in that. And by the way, well, actually, no, let me, I'll come back to that in a second. So the final, thank you for the comments. Let me see if I missed anything. Have I had Israeli conflict in my risk assessment? Well, I mean, since our business is mining in Brazil, we did have geopolitical, but different kind of geopolitical. So, I mean, technically speaking, yes, but I mean, not this conflict explicitly. But then again, I wrote a very important article saying why many people misunderstand kind of the application of risk analysis, because they keep viewing it as a prediction of specific events, but that's not the whole that's not the whole objective. Hi, Vancouver. Okay, so Nicolene is asking a very, very important question again. How do I change my qualitative risk register to quantitative risk management tool? There's a simple, quick answer. You can turn any qualitative risk register into a quantitative risk register within minutes. There are literally templates available to do that. And one of the templates is by Doug Hubbard, and another template is by Sam Savage, both of whom demonstrated during previous risk awareness weeks. So Nicolene, send me a message, send me like an email or a message on social media, so I can actually give you the specific link, because I'm not going to look for it now. But there's basically a very simple template that you can copy paste your risk register into, and that immediately turns it into a quantitative risk register. However, any risk register of any shape is not risk management too. Risk management too is not just quantitative. It's about the concept is completely different. Risk management too starts with a decision. For example, we need to budget for a construction project. To budget for construction project, we need a contingency. Contingency is risk-based. How do we calculate the contingency? That's risk management too. Or we need to budget for the next year for operational expenses. We need to ensure that our expected losses are incorporated into the budget so we don't have surprises during the year. How do we calculate expected losses? That's risk management too. We want to invest in a new project. We need to calculate the risk-adjusted NPV to decide if this is a good decision under all risk scenarios. How do we calculate risk-adjusted NPV? That's risk management too. See, completely different thing. Can you please clarify your comment on Google Docs? I mean, I think Google Sheets can still do the same kind of risk analysis as Excel. I mean, I haven't tried. I think they may. The SIPMAS standard, which Sam Savage will talk extensively about during the Risk Awareness Week, you can use it in anything. I mean, ChatGPT can now do proper quantitative risk analysis. So it's hardly a problem. Hi Kuala Lumpur. Hi Kenya. Okay, so Whammy is asking a very, very important question. He's saying, does it depend on the size and nature of the business, the industry, the country, to decide whether to adopt risk management 1 and risk management 2? These are not choices. This is a very important message, so thank you for the question. These are not choices. You have to have risk management 1, because somebody is asked, like, you have to have some form of risk management 1. And the point I'm trying to make is, don't treat risk management 1 too seriously. Don't spend too much effort on this, because it's a compromise, it's window dressing, it's not real, it's play pretend. You have to have it, because your external auditors are going to ask for it, your regulators are going to ask for it. I wish they didn't, but they're still going to ask for it. So don't worry about that too much. And then if you want to make a difference, if you want to save money, if you want to make money, and this is what my next slide is all about, it's much easier to get management buy-in and support and resources and commitment from the top when you actually make a lot of money for the company. You can reduce the cost of insurance, you can reduce operational losses, you can reduce the maintenance budget, you can reduce write-offs from bad debtors in sales and credit management. All of these are real hard cash savings. They're not hypothetical. Risk, we prevented the risk, it didn't happen, so we could have lost, but we didn't lose. You literally calculate what the losses from different risks were this year, and then next year you show how the losses are lower significantly, or the cost of insurance is lower. You compare apples to apples and you show the difference. And the only way you can save money, and when I said we've saved $13 million, we've paid for the whole department with all the bonuses and all the salaries for the next 10 years. This is what risk management is all about. You have to pay for yourself. Like you basically, you justify the company to have good risk management. So it's not really a choice between one or the other. You do risk management one as quickly as possible, and then and then you find the time and you start focusing on specific applications of risk management too. Risk management too is not a single thing. It's not a thing. It's just a marketing name I came up with to group all of these individual specific procurement, cost and schedule, budgeting, NPV, investment, all these different kinds of risk management under one umbrella. Ricardo is saying generators versus consumers or users makes complete sense. Exactly. Thank you, Ricardo. Good point. Albina, yes, if you are enrolled in DCRO course that I'm running, it does include full access to a raw. On the screen where you see on the left bottom, there's support. Just send the message there and I'll give you full access. How can we quantify the value? So Nam is asking a great question. How can we quantify the value of risk management? So my simple answer is on the slide in front of you. How much cash is saved through better risk management? And once you save your first million, then you don't really have to justify the value of risk management. It becomes apparent to everyone in the organization. Tatiana is asking, what are the key issues with ESG related risks based on my experience? I mean, it's not a methodological question. It's a specific question to ESG risks for which I have an answer and great opportunity here. Let me first kind of do a little bit of admin. Keep your questions coming. And by the way, let me quickly answer. Good point on compliance, risk management. Thank you. Hi, from Kuala Lumpur. Thanks, Letty. Corruption, risk management. I don't know, Mohammed, can you maybe try and rephrase your question? What about corruption, risk management? It's basically anything that is required by law. It's not really a place for risk management too. You just do whatever the law requires you to do. And sometimes it's play pretend because unfortunately the regulators are very, very behind in terms of good risk management. And so it's, there's no opportunity to implement better risk management too. For example, taxation risk. Ministry of Finance in one of the countries where I worked issued a methodological guidance on how to do taxation risk. And the methodology that they proposed was completely flawed. It was like, it failed year 7 math. It was so bad. And I've attempted to numerous times to change the legislation by talking to different ministries and the regulators and the central bank. And sometimes we were able to stop the legislation from being approved. But most of the time it just still went ahead. And so you just comply with it and don't think too much about it, even knowing you realize it's completely false. And there's no point fighting windmills, from Don Quixote book reference. What makes risk management work is the actions being taken at the most important part of the risk management. So Letty, I completely agree. And here's a very important point. When you talk with risk owners in the workshop, trying to brainstorm actions, and you do this in the context of a kind of a high-level register, the actions you come up with are most of the time suboptimal and sometimes completely wrong. Because what I've experienced is when you deep dive into a specific risk, when you start doing risk management too. For example, we had this water pollution risk, and we had all the workshops and the brainstorming and the interviews with risk owners. We used like a 5-branch decision tree, so we estimated the risk to be X. And then for some reason, well, it just by coincidence, the environmental team approached us and said, oh, we need to deep dive into this risk because we want to build a business case for water purification plant. And it's a, $20 million investment. We need like proper risk analysis. We said, sure. So we deep dived and turned out we needed not a 5-branch decision tree, but a 24-branch decision tree. So because the problem was much, much more complex. And once we've done that, we realized that the actual risk exposure was original X plus $1 billion. But we will also realize the original design for the water purification plant didn't actually reduce the risk significantly enough, because we were literally modeling different chemical compounds in the water discharges. So we had like a full model, full simulation of how much water, where, what's the chemical composition of different elements within the water. So once we've done that, we've realized that the original mitigation was actually not going to work and did not reduce the risk sufficient, and in fact would be a waste of money to invest. So they ended up redesigning the plant and only then getting approval for the redesigned plan. So yes, mitigations are the most important part, but unless you deep dive, the chances are you're not doing justice to the mitigations. Jenny is asking, how do you show received costs for basically the tail of the distribution, which don't happen often? I mean, I don't think you mean how do you show receipt, because if you haven't received them, you don't show them. I think what you mean, reduce cost. Oh, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. You don't show reduced costs for specifically the tail of the distribution. You show that the physical cost of your insurance, while you're covering the same limit or you're doubling the limit, you're showing that you're actually paying less for that quality of coverage. There's no hypothetical in the value of risk management. You're literally saying, last year we covered 10 million exposure and we paid $1,000. This year we're covering 10 million exposure, no additional deductibles, nothing changed, and we're paying $500. That's the kind of savings we usually show. But in reality, for us, it was last time we covered 10 million, this year we're covering 20 million, and we're still paying less. And no other changes happen to the quality of coverage. If anything, we've actually expanded some of the sublimits. So we've made the coverage better. How can somebody with 12 years of experience learn about risk management? Well, Risk Awareness Week is a good start to learn about risk management. And don't forget that this is 2023, which means there are 5 years of Risk Awareness weeks. There's 2019 Risk Awareness Week, 2020 Risk Awareness Week. And since, by the way, most of the comments are coming from LinkedIn and YouTube, do not forget to register on this link right now, because in 10 minutes, I'll finish and this broadcast will finish. But then for the rest of the day, there is, I think, 6 more workshops happening from some of the best risk management and decision-making people on the planet. Somebody who I personally respect, and somebody who is risk management too in their mindset, in their application, in their experience. And in terms of courses, DCRO course, I have my own course there, so that's obviously something that I recommend. Okay, Radoslav is asking, can I give an example of corporate risk from the risk register? So how to upgrade it from risk management 1 to risk management 2? I mean, one of the examples where I had water pollution. That was, and by the way, I have a specific workshop on that during the Risk Awareness Week 2022. So you can rewatch that. It's at water pollution, and we estimated some sort of potential losses from that risk, and the probability of occurring, or the frequency of occurring, and the fines. And what we then did is we actually ended up building. So this was risk management 1, and in risk management 2, we've built a calculator for the environmental team, where for each of the plants, and we had 10 chemical plants, for each of the plants, for each of the specific water discharges, each of the plants has 1 or 2 or 3 specific water discharges where the sampling is done and where the potential risk exposure is. We've built a calculator where they take the test, record the chemical compound of the composition of the water, plug in the concentrations into the calculator, and it gives them the risk exposure. It recalculates the whole risk exposure and tells them whether this needs to be mitigated or not. So this is a very kind of simple example, or another one where we said there's one risk that our capex budget will be overspent and the contingency will not be enough. So on Friday, I will demonstrate a calculator that we've built for the contingency calculation, and showed what is the probability. We calculated the probability of exceeding the budgeted contingency. What's the probability that we will need more money than we anticipate, and what's the probability we will need to get approval from the board for that additional money? That's an example of taking a risk from the corporate risk register, which is high level, and then creating a specific calculator for that risk, deep diving, understanding the nature of the risk, and showing the value. And yeah, both instances, the answers were so drastically different. It was amazing. In water pollution, it turned out risk exposure was much greater. It needed to be mitigated, but the mitigation was wrong, so they needed a different mitigation. In capex, it was kind of the other way around. We thought the risk was this much. It actually turned out to be this much. And so we could actually free up some of the cash and spend it on some of the other important ESG initiatives. So like amazing, kind of surprising conclusions every time you deep dive into a risk. So Adeline is asking, how can these ESG risks be embedded in organizations and the ARM framework, particularly in financial organizations? So this is an important question, because ESG is risk management 1. ARM is risk management 1. So the simple answer is you can integrate it in whatever way you feel like it. It makes no difference. It's play pretend. It's not real. And so do whatever you literally do whatever you feel like. This is so difficult for people to psychologically appreciate. Risk management 1 doesn't matter. You can't do amazing risk management or amazing risk management 1 or poor risk management 1. No one will care. It's not real. It's facade. It's window dressing. So don't spend too much time thinking like you can't do risk management 1 wrong. It's not real. So Magdi is asking future of risk management trends, and let me repeat the risk management trends, because people asking about AI. I think we're so far behind. We are light years behind AI. We need to get basic math right before you start talking about your AI, because you can use the AI today to create the most amazing risk management policy and risk appetite statement and framework and corporate risk register, which will just make your risk management 1 better. Having the most amazing risk management is not the objective. There's no value in creating amazing risk management 1. So by all means, your objective is to simplify and make it quicker. So of course you have to use AI to simplify risk management 1. If you don't want to waste your time, you want to focus your time on risk management 2. So risk management trends, stop wasting time on risk management 1. Start thinking about specific applications of risk management 2. Risk management requires math. Find your generator, focus on selling the calculators and models within the organization and improving the culture. That's going to be the trend. The trend for risk management is going to be all quantitative, but you don't have to do it yourself, so don't stress. The next trend is risk management one is going to be interactive. Basically, you take whatever models, files, templates, reports that the business is using, and you turn them behind the scenes, you turn them into risk adjusted calculators. You change something or the business changes something. The idea behind risk management too is you don't change anything. The business makes all the changes and then it just recalculates the risks. And then the final trend, we have to start saving a lot of money on risk management. Jennifer is asking, is Risk Awareness Week a free event? There is a free access, yes. There's also a paid full access. You can choose whatever you like. Okay, I think I've answered all the questions. So let me quickly kind of talk about the admin side. And this is just a reminder. First, don't forget the website, 2023 Risk Awareness Week. You want to register because you would want to see all the other workshops. When you register, there are a few things to remember. You basically, once you log in, and it's very easy to find login because it's top right, it says register and login. You can add you can look at your schedule, you can add all the workshops to your calendar. Free access gives you an option of any 3 workshops live. If you want to watch replays, if you want to watch more than 3 workshops, please upgrade. And there are different options for upgrading from cheap to slightly more expensive. But more importantly, there's a corporate access option, which is, again, so cheap that usually it costs more for a single person to attend the conference. And the corporate access gives access to all of your employees. There are important things on every single page, on every workshop. Basically, when you go and click on the workshop page, when the time comes, there's a timer on the top right. When the time comes, the page reloads and the workshop starts. So you don't have to do anything. You just go on the workshop page and just wait for the workshop to start. There's a support button bottom left. And there, some people have been saying hello there and asking how am I doing. Please only write technical questions. All the other questions should go next to the actual workshop. You can add each of the workshops to your calendar, so there's a reminder. And this is my favorite. On the bottom right, if you click on the button with the logo of an umbrella, which is the Risk Academy logo, you can literally talk to my AI chatbot, which has been trained on 1,000 Risk Academy articles, some of the past Risk Awareness Week workshops, and about 1,000 videos that I've recorded over time. And by the way, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do. And thank you to Joe, who just became a member of our YouTube channel. So I've trained this chatbot to be risk management too, to give you answers not too dissimilar to what I would normally say. So try it, give it a try. Literally, if you want to have a kind of methodological conversation, or if you want to get chatbot to rephrase your risk properly, or you want some sort of answers to a methodological question, talk to it. And you can talk to it 24/7. You don't have to write to me. Start with the chatbot because it is amazing. And I'm not exaggerating. It is amazing. Whenever I have to write something on LinkedIn, I wouldn't go to ChatGPT. I would go to my own chatbot because that answers and responds much closer to what I'm thinking than ChatGPT. Because ChatGPT, by the way, is risk management 1, unfortunately, because it's trained on everything that is out there in the world. And since there's more risk management 1 stuff in the world than risk management 2, then no surprises, ChatGPT is very risk management 1. So basically, if you ask ChatGPT about risk management, chances are at 90%, 95%, it will give you a wrong answer. unless you've explicitly asked about risk management to or decision kind of integration into decision-making context. Now, few other final thoughts. You've obviously already figured out how to write comments. I can see that. Thank you, everyone, for your interactivity. Now, this is super important. Just below the video, there's a thumbs up. If you enjoyed the workshop, if you like the workshop, if you like the messages, if you find this useful, click the thumbs up, because this will indicate to the other users who will be watching in replay the workshops that they need to prioritize. So this is super important that you click the thumbs up. There's also sharing buttons. Please share on social media. This is what this whole idea of Risk Awareness Week is about. This is about sharing with the rest of the sharing with the rest of the people, raising risk awareness. Share within your organization, share within your social media. Please help spread the message. And just below where you see the speaker, and by the way, thank you, Sammy. Me too. I am kind of surprised and amazed at how great some of the answers are from the chatbot. And so final message, some of the speakers do share their slides and their downloads. And for example, I shared a lot of downloads for each of the workshops that I'm doing now and I will run in the future. If you scroll down, you will be able, basically scroll down, see what's on the page. You will be able to download different useful information, guidelines, downloadable slides. And if you're missing anything, don't hesitate, just ask the question. And I've overspent my time. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Enjoy Risk Awareness Week. Don't forget to register on the website. Have fun. And I hope you love risk management and decision making, proper risk-based decision making as much as I do. Thank you, and see you in the next workshops.